Welcome to a post-feast week edition of the Nebraska Shootaround podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Bigelow, the men's basketball beat writer for Varsity, and joining me as always is my co-host, Jacob Bigelow. Biggs, how you doing?
I'm doing well, man. Last week we got to bid a fond farewell to any diet plans we had with Thanksgiving, and this week we bid a fond farewell to the ACC Big Ten Challenge. But first we recap a up and down trip to Orlando for Fred Hoiberg's crew. You might even say a down and up trip to Orlando. But regardless, there was two different directions in the trip. So we'll recap that, and then we'll eulogize the Big Ten ACC Challenge and preview a little bit of the Jim Molinari return game. So excited to be here.
Yeah, hopefully the Jim Molinari return game goes better than the Doc Sadler revenge game. That didn't go well for Nebraska. But
yes,
the good news from last week is Derrick Walker made his return, and boy, does he make a difference.
That may be the understatement of the year. I don't think we need to talk too much about Oklahoma. I will indict myself calling the game winnable. As I did last week. Also, probably didn't expect the Sooners to win the whole tournament. That probably just goes to show you the strength of the field of the ESPN Events Invitational. But Oklahoma won the event, and the only mid-major in the field, Siena, went 2-1 and finished third. So, the secret to winning your Thanksgiving week, MTE, is hiring a man who lives in a van to join your coaching staff. So that is this past week in Oklahoma basketball. So
yeah, Nebraska lost the opening game of the ESPN Events Invitational in Orlando to Oklahoma, 69-56. And yeah, I mean, we both thought it was a winnable game. I feel like Derrick Walker had been healthy, it maybe would have been more competitive, but Oklahoma also knocked down 9 threes, shot 45%. And the Groves brothers, who were, I believe, 5 for 26 combined from three going into the game, they went 5 for 8 or 5 for 7 between the two of them, and scored 33 points on 60% shooting. So that's not going to go over well because I mean they did a good job on Grant Sherfield. They had 10 points on 12 shots, although he also had 8 assists. But yeah, they just didn't really have an answer. Every time they kind of tried to gain a little bit of momentum, felt like Oklahoma hit a three. And on the other side, Nebraska shot 3 of 14 from three, and 2 of those 3 were from Juwan Gary. So that anytime your kind of 3 designated shooters in Bandamel, Wilcher, and Tominaga combined to shoot 1 for 9, Nebraska's probably not going to win that game. And that ended up being the case, which Oklahoma only took 3 free throws all game. That was kind of impressive to win by 13 while only taking 3 free throws. It's not something you typically see. Nebraska, on the other hand, was 11 for 19. So leaving points at the foul line yet again. And Gary led him in scoring, 16 points on 7 of 13 shooting. Bandamel at 13 points, was only 1 of 4 from 3, but had a couple and did most of his damage from the free throw line, went 6 for 8 there. He did have 5 assists and no turnovers. And then beyond that, you didn't really get much from anybody. Sam Griesel had a rough one. 4 assists, 4 turnovers, 6 points on 6 shots. And CJ Wilcher, 9 points on 10 shots, did not make a 3. So yeah, they just once again couldn't quite handle pressure, couldn't to generate good offensive looks, and could not hit the shots that they did get. So kind of the story of that one.
Yeah, offense. I think a way to just say it is roster deficiency leads to offensive inefficiency, and that reared its ugly head against OU. And we saw a little bit of the same the next day in the game that we were initially the most scared of, and and that was in a battle of two. I wouldn't have wanted to face the coaches in the second game in a game of 2-on-2. Penny Hardaway and Fred Hoiberg, as Nebraska took on Memphis, but that was kind of more of the same.
Yeah, well, and Memphis landed in that game by losing on a banked three-pointer at the buzzer to Seton Hall. Kind of a disaster end of the game, just all kinds of weird stuff happening, and ended up with Seton Hall banking in a three to send Memphis down to the loser bracket where they face Nebraska. And this was the Derrick Walker debut game. And I think the best way to describe it is kind of up and down. A lot of good, but a lot of bad as well. And the bad ended up playing a huge part in why they lost. But the good also kind of carried over into their third game in the tournament and bodes well for the future. So that was a 73-61 win for Memphis. And just kind of the general story of the game. Neither team scored early. Nebraska scored first, about a couple minutes into the game, and then Memphis scored 11 straight as Nebraska went scoreless for about 6 minutes. Ugly start to the game there. Again, just nothing they tried was really working, and they finally got into it. 13-5 response to cut it to a 1-point game, and kind of went back and forth the rest of the half. Juwan Gary tied it up with a three-pointer at 30-all with 45 seconds left, and then Memphis ended the half with a three-pointer. Although actually it left time for one more shot for Nebraska, which ended up being a Sam Griesel kick to the corner for Derrick Walker 3, which not sure that's what Fred called from the bench, but it was a clean look. He just did not make it. So they went in down 33-30 at halftime, like, all right, probably feeling good at that point. We got a chance to win this thing. Then they proceeded to turn the ball over 6 times in their first 10 possessions of the second half. All 6 were from Derrick Walker. And it was a 12-5 start to the half for a 45-35 lead. Their first field goal didn't come until about the 16-minute mark when Bandamel hit a 3. So at that point, 10-point game, you kind of starting to slip away. They do make a little run there, outscore them 7-2 to cut it down to 5. And then Alex Lomax, who was 0 for 7 from 3 going into the game. You'll notice a trend here in these losses for Nebraska. Step back 3, not even just a catch and shoot 3. Step back 3 for his second triple of the game, of the second half even. And then got a steal and a layup to push it back to 10 at the under 12 timeout. Bandamel hit got fouled on a 3, hit 2 of the 3, and then Memphis used a 7-0 run to open up a 15-point game, and then basically traded buckets the rest of the way. They couldn't get stops to kind of break into it. So that was a ball game. That little stretch there after Nebraska gave themselves one last chance with a little spurt, cut it down to 5. And then 12-2 run there for Memphis to essentially kind of end the game. So that was kind of the story of the game. Just Nebraska, they not able to execute well enough. They had 20 turnovers. 9 of them were from Walker, but yeah, not what you want to see. Those 20 turnovers led to 19 points by Memphis. They had a 10-point edge in points off turnovers and a 12-point win. So it's kind of a big part of the story right there. Both sides hit 9 threes. Nebraska actually shot fairly well from the 3-point line. A lot of that was because Bandamel got hot, and Tominaga also hit 3 of them off the bench. They hit 3 apiece for kind of the bulk of that 3-point shooting. CJ Wilcher still couldn't quite find it. He was 1 of 5. And Juwan Gary was 2 for 7, which, again, you don't want Juwan Gary taking 7 threes in any game. And it has happened far too many times.
Mm-hmm.
The reason you're open, Juwan. I understand Fred wants you to shoot those, but yeah, maybe be a little bit more patient.
Mm-hmm.
But so this kind of it's interesting. For stretches, I think this game exposed one of the weaknesses that I thought in the defending quick point guards. They had Kendrick Davis, the transfer from SMU. So Vanderbilt got to go up against his former backcourt mate there with the Mustangs and was the guy in charge of guarding him for most of the night. They forced him to take 19 shots and 5 free throws to get his 21 points. So in one sense, that's pretty good. He had 7 assists, but down the stretch, he was a big part of why they couldn't do anything but trade buckets and could not kind of claw back into the game because they just had no answer. He had some tough buckets down the stretch. And we saw parts of this game where Keisei Tominaga was the guy they had like guarding him, not even on switches, just straight up. That was the matchup, which you probably don't want that. But with the way the matchups worked out, they didn't really have a lot of options there. So that's kind of one of the negatives takeaway going forward. But despite the 9 turnovers, Walker had 15 points on 7-11 shooting and 12 rebounds and also 3 assists. So double-double right off the bat. In his first game back, he played 35 minutes, which is pretty impressive for, like, you wouldn't expect his conditioning to kind of be there coming out. He's been practicing with the team, but there's a difference between being a practice body and being in game shape. And that's kind of what he's been. But Manuel Vanderbilt, 18 points, 5 of 9 from the field, 3 of 4 from 3, 5 of 7 from the line, 5 assists, 5 boards, and only 2 turnovers. He was good. He gave him a chance, hit some tough shots, and then Keisei 11 off the bench. But again, CJ Wilcher, 5 points, 2 of 7 shooting. Juwan Gary, 6 points, 2 of 11 shooting. And Sam Griesel, only 4 points, 1 assist, and 2 turnovers in 32 minutes. They cannot win with Sam playing that way. It's just the bottom line. They need more out of him. They got to find ways to put him in better situations, and he just has to play better. And to his credit, he did in the next game. But I think that was a big part of their struggle in this game. They just can't get enough guys playing well at the same time.
Yeah, if you can get a good night out of Walker like we got in his first game back, in theory, you just need one more good night from another guy in the supporting cast, and maybe this game's a little closer, but just couldn't get enough when they needed it. And I, completely and totally agree with what you said about, first 2 games weren't great for Sam. And that is reflected both in the box score and the final score. He, part of me thinks he's still kind of, he's played high major teams before at NDSU, but he's definitely still adjusting to that being the majority of the competition that he sees night in and night out. But like you said, he bounced back when in doubt. And when you need to get off the schneid, no better recipe than a 1-win ACC team.
Yeah, and I think just kind of the final note on the Memphis game, Alex Lomax outscored everybody on Nebraska's team except for Vanderbilt and Walker. And if you know Lomax, he is a super senior point guard for the Tigers. He played for Penny at the AU circuit. Came with him to Memphis, been there a long time. He tough guy, great leadership, hustle guy. He is a very bad offensive player, and they let him score 13 points on efficient, 5 of 8 from the field, 2 of 2 from 3, and 3 assists. So, yeah, that's like you're letting that guy score 13 on you while your starting backcourt I guess Vanderbilt, but Griesel and Wilcher combining for 9 points between them. that's going to be a loss. But
yeah, it's an all too familiar thing with this program. The who the hell is this guy? Like, where the hell did he come from on the other team? Just having not even a breakout game, but just way too good of a game against Nebraska. I feel like it's been a bit of thing for a couple years now.
So that sent them into the 7th place game against Leonard Hamilton's Florida State team that was 1-6 going into the game. They are very bad.
Yeah, they're long, they're big, but they're also bad, real bad.
Yeah.
And
their only win is against Mercer, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 of their losses were to AAC or below level mid-major teams. That the UCF loss in there, so you can kind of, AAC is kind of that borderline between high and mid-major, but they lost to Stetson, they lost to Troy, and they lost to Siena. And they got handled by Siena.
mm-hmm.
Lost that one by 17 in the first game of the tournament. So that's not. I don't know quite what happened to Florida State over the last couple of years. Baba Miller being ineligible currently, serving suspension. That hurts. I think they've got a guy that's hurt as well, but like they still had a lot of like name players that you know of. Matthew Cleveland, Caleb Mills. They've got some guys like that, and so like they've got some pieces that can actually play. Cameron Fletcher, highly regarded guy that transferred there from Kentucky. So there's no way they should be as bad as they are, but they are really bad. And I think the stat that kind of spells that out more than anything is Nebraska scored 50 points in the paint, despite shooting 25% from 3.
And that's when Florida State had a 7'4" guy in there in the paint for part of the time. Had some pretty good size on the interior and the wings. And even with Nebraska's deficiencies, athleticism-wise or scoring-wise, they still kind of did whatever they wanted to against Florida State's defense. Florida State's defensive rebounding was atrocious. If you want to see a dead body, go look at Florida State's KenPom page. I'll just leave it at that. I don't know what the hell happened there. Leonard Hamilton's a really good coach, and he's been a really good coach for a really long time. So, it's November. They could, in theory, bounce back somehow, some way. But, just seeing a Leonard Hamilton team with, like you said, some names we recognize just look that abysmal on both ends of the court was pretty eye-opening for a college basketball dork like me. But enough about them. Let's talk about Nebraska. Derrick Walker doing Derrick Walker stuff for a second straight game with a second straight double-double and a career best night. He had 20 points on a super efficient 10 of 12 shooting to go along with 13 boards and 4 assists. Not bad for his second game back.
Yeah, and only 1 turnover. So cutting it down from 9 to 1. And I like watching. I kind of watched and charted basically all of his box score plays in those 2 games that he played, and I thought a lot of his turnovers were simply first game back, rust, not being in sync with his teammates. There were some mistimed passes. There was one point where CJ Wilcher ran through his dribble and knocked it free, which. Yeah, that's a bad way to get a turnover. So I thought just a lot of it was him kind of working through the rust, and didn't show any of that rust in the second game because he was by far the best player on the floor from start to finish. And the thing that was probably most notable about the performance was the amount of plays that he simply made off the dribble. So when he got to Nebraska, based on what he had shown at Tennessee, he looked pretty much exclusively like a catch and finish type of big, like dunker spot, pick and roll. You're not going to ask him to create any sort of offense. And that's kind of who he was his first year at Nebraska. Obviously, he had to serve that suspension early on, but over the second half, like, he was reliable, could make some plays in there, but he wasn't a guy that you're running the offense through. Last season, he became such an important piece for them that they changed the offense mid-season to run more through him. That kind of displays that they weren't seeing this going into the year. This isn't what they were expecting, and they realized what they had. Hoiberg adjusted and tried to take advantage of what he was doing. Single season field goal percentage mark at Nebraska, I believe.
I believe so, yes.
And he's currently on pace to set the career record as he continues tearing it up at an efficient rate in his first 2 games this year. But so he became he had really good pick and roll chemistry with Alonzo Verge Jr. He became a really efficient post-up player where they could get the ball to him, and he could create his own looks, which, again, that was new from what we had seen previously. Now he is apparently adding an off-the-dribble game to his arsenal.
Yeah.
And I asked him about it, and he said it wasn't really something that he put a big emphasis on. He said it just kind of happened. With the way the game plan has been, with the way the teams have been defending him, like, you saw him bringing it up the floor more often as often as he outletted it to someone else. And not only, it wasn't simply just dribble it up against nobody. He was bringing it up and then attacking and making plays. Like, I joked with Sam afterward, like, hey, you better be careful. Derrick might be coming for your job with the way that he was handling the ball. I felt bad for Naheem McLeod, I believe his name, the 7'4" sophomore. I think he is for Florida State. Man, Derrick just abused him, just faced up, drove by him multiple times. And then there was one play in the second half, I think it was, where they ran a little baseline out of bounds play, got it to him like 8 feet from the basket, just faced up, one dribble, bodied him, knocked him back, and went up and finished. It was like this just bully balling this 7'4", 255-pound dude, just like out of my way. So just kind of scoring on him every way possible. And so he was really impressive. I kind of like just looking at all his buckets in the 2 games. So he had 3 putbacks, and then so that he had 17 total buckets, 3 putbacks. 7 of them were kind of on one dribble less, which is a lot of what we saw last year, where pick and roll. There was a nice, impressive little short roll bucket was, I think, his last bucket, where caught it, put it on the deck once, and then kind of avoided a guy who set up to take a charge and little runner bank off the glass or whatever, which he just continues to show his touch has improved so much since he got here. His arsenal of ways he can finish, that kind of put a cap on his game. But 7 one dribble or less, post up, short pick and roll stuff, that type of thing. 7 buckets off the bounce, so almost half his offense were him catching it out on the perimeter, putting the ball on the deck, and making a play. He's crossing over, he's spinning back, he's backing guys down, getting to his spots, and just going up and finishing. So really impressive what I saw from him. He just continues to get better, and Nebraska, as a result, they won by 17. Nebraska beat another high major team by 17 points. When's the last time that they've been able to say that? Again, Florida State barely qualifies this year, but by budget, by recruiting pedigree, they are a major team. So,
yes, indeed.
And it turns out having your best player makes a difference. And this is why, while we're pretty disappointed and discouraged by what we saw early on, I think you and I were both kind of in just wait and see mode. Like, looks bad now, but let's just wait and see until Walker gets back in there, and then we'll have a better feel for what this team is actually going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as someone who watched a lot, I've talked about this before, as someone who watched a lot of Fred Hoiberg's Iowa State teams, Derrick bringing the ball up, I'm like, 6'9" guy bringing the ball up, huh? This is a little, I've seen this before. Little Royce Whitey, little George Niang-ish kind of thing going on there. Was cool. It was cool to see. Made my little basketball dork brain happy. In that Florida State game, Juwan Gary only took 1 3. So maybe that was emphasized to him. But,
And Hoiberg today thought he kind of was pressing a little bit with some of his shots in the first couple of games. And to his credit, like the first game, like he was their leading scorer, but that Memphis game was pretty rough. But this game, 10 points, and all of his buckets were on cuts. And that is how you want to see him getting his shot attempts. Everything at the rim. There were a couple where he caught it and was able to just put the ball on the deck once, twice, and go up and finish. A couple cuts down the lane where his defender turned their head and was ball watching, which again, don't know how often that play in particular is going to be there against a well-disciplined team. Florida State's defense was very bad, but that's what you want to see. You want to see him getting those looks. You want to see C.J. Wilcher getting catch and shoot 3 looks. And Wilcher had a good game as well, scored 13 points.
I'd say everybody not named Emmanuel Bandamel had a pretty good game against Florida State.
Yeah. So, your other 4 starters were all in double figures, and then you got double figures. You got 13 from Tominaga off the bench, although he only shot 1 of 6 from 3. Touch on him in a minute, but so mentioned Gary, 10 points on all 5 shots at the bucket off the cuts. That's what you want to see him playing off of. Sam Griesel and Derrick Walker, and that's a lot of what those cuts that he had were, where Walker or Griesel was making a play, and Gary saw the opportunity, cut to the basket, and finished. So you want to see that more often than him spotting up. And again, C.J. Wilcher got a couple catch shoot 3s, and then got a chance to attack some closeouts, had a couple nice buckets inside as well. But Sam Griesel, I think, having Derrick Walker back and kind of fully immersed in the offenses and being a secondary playmaker, pressure release, I think it took a huge burden off of Griesel to not have to handle the ball all the time, especially with the way that teams have been pressuring Nebraska and making him really work to even get into the front court and to get into their offense, let alone to actually go try to score. So Sam finished with 13 points, 9 assists, only 1 rebound, but that's because Walker was grabbing all of them, and only 2 turnovers in 30 minutes. And 4 of 9 from the field, including 2 of 5 from 3. Knocked down a couple catch and shoot 3s, including a 4-point play, which was great to see. He hasn't been taking a lot of 3s, but he also, because he hasn't been making a lot of 3s. So it was good to see him knock those down as well. But there were a few plays where it's kind of 2-man game between him and Derrick, whether that led to assists or buckets for Sam. But not even just like the 2-man game. It's just simply Derrick being on the court and lessening the responsibility, letting Nebraska put Griesel in positions to be more aggressive, to make plays, as opposed to having to kind of carry the entire offense on his shoulders.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about how Sam being the only ball handler on the floor is not, it's definitely not how we envisioned this going, but it definitely makes the game plan defensively a little easier when you can kind of, we said it after that game, which was 5 games ago now. It's crazy to think that. But after St. John's, we said, you're not going to see a lot of teams pressure like St. John's does, but even if you don't press heavy like they do, when there's only one guy who's going to initiate, create, and handle the ball, it's a pretty easy scouting report. But with Derrick back, definitely lessens the burden on Sam, both ball handling wise and initiation of the offense wise. And I'm sure he's more than happy to have Derrick back on the floor. And now we can move on from a 1-2 weekend in Atlanta to a declaration that I have to make. We are recording this the night before Nebraska takes on Boston College in the Big Ten ACC Challenge. If you're listening to this morning of 8:15 tip on ESPNU against the Boston College, and I'm here to declare that this game, you never want to do this in November, but I kind of alluded to this if you follow me on Twitter on Sunday. This game's a must-win game. There's no other way to slice it, really. Florida State was kind of the first must-win game of the year, and now you're back at home. You got to defend home court, and you got to defend home court against another bottom-of-the-pack ACC squad, and for that reason, I have decided to I do declare that this is a must-win game for Fred Hoiberg's team.
Yeah, and we were talking kind of before we started here about this, and Florida State was the first truly must-win game of the season. Like, with the start the Seminoles had, you couldn't lose that game if you want to have any semblance of success this season. Boston College is number 2, and I think you and I, kind of looking ahead at the Big Ten, we identified Minnesota at home and Northwestern at home as the other 2 must-win games. We talk about the ACC Big Ten Challenge. Northwestern got run off the floor by a bad Pitt team on day 1, and Minnesota lost by 10 to Virginia Tech, and it probably shouldn't have been that close based on the way their best players played. So those are 2 bad teams. So if Nebraska wants to stay out of the absolute cellar of the Big Ten again this season, those are teams they have to beat, especially at home. So I think we're looking at 4 true must-win teams. And then beyond that, you're looking at hopefully more toss-ups. And there would be a number of games where, good luck. And we'll see a few of those coming up here pretty soon.
Yeah, that's the other reason. That's the other reason this BC game is must win, because after Boston College comes to town, here's what you have to follow: a trip up I-80 to play the number 7 team in the country, and then a trip to Bloomington, Indiana to play the number 10 team in the country 3 days later. And then a couple days after you go on the road to the number 10 team in the country, the newly minted number 5 team in the country comes to your building. And a week later, you go on the road to play a K-State team who, 1, probably is going to be undefeated when you see them, and 2, their leading scorer is a player that your team could have had but wasn't cleared by doctors. And he's looking just fine down in Manhattan in the purple and gray. Yeah. So
talking about Deontay Johnson there, the former Florida Gator who collapsed on the court back with Florida. And
we didn't talk about that at all over the summer. That was a kind of a late summer thing, so we never really got to touch on that. That was a fun 2 days.
It turns in, I think the guys on the Eye on College Basketball podcast over at CBS kind of highlighted this, Gary Parrish in particular. Turns out that the Big 12 is the place to go for college basketball players with heart conditions who have had trouble getting released by other doctors in other leagues, because that's like 2-3 different players now that have not been given the okay to play elsewhere that have come to the Big 12 and have ended up resuming their careers. I think Jared Butler was one of them at Baylor, who had really good career at Baylor, but has struggled in the NBA with some various health issues and just performance issues as well. But I forget who else. I think there might have been somebody else that also got cleared. But regardless, cleared at Nebraska, but Kansas State decided, we can let him play, and he's having a great season so far for the Wildcats.
Yeah, and then before that, like we said, number 7, number 10, number 5, all in less than a week. Definitely a rubber hits the road stretch coming up. I think think every year under Fred Hoiberg, they've had to make a trip to Assembly Hall in the first 2-game Big Ten in December deal, and it turns out this year Indiana's really good. They're really good. May or may not be might or may not have a phone call set up with a certain former Nebraska assistant who is currently the associate head coach at Indiana to talk about his team leading into that game, so I can give you a little bit of insight. But
we'll kind of hit the preview for that more heavily after these next two games. But we'll record again. We're recording this on Tuesday. We'll probably record Monday or Tuesday next week as well, ahead of that Indiana game on Wednesday. So we'll kind of react to what happens in the Boston College and Creighton games. But so we'll kind of focus on a little bit more on the previewing those games. Boston College, 110th in KenPom. They are 207th on offense and 52nd on defense. So their defensive metrics across the board are pretty solid. But they're 5-2 with losses to Maine and Tarleton State, and they have not yet played a high major team. Their 5 wins have come against Cornell, Detroit Mercy, George Mason, Wyoming, and Rhode Island. And that Wyoming win would have meant something, except the Cowboys have completely fallen apart without Graham Ike in the lineup. And they have really struggled this year. So even that's their best win, I would say, to this point. And that's not as impressive as it could have been.
I was expecting to have to keep an eye on Wyoming and Jeff Linder for reasons, but we early on it appears we don't have to do that, at least not until Graham Ike is back healthy. I just looked at this screen next to me. Chris Murray has 31-18 against Georgia Tech right now. Jeez. So that's a thing that's happening, but that's beside the point.
I think everybody expected a breakout. I did not think that he would just straight up become Keegan. I thought there was a difference between those two. Apparently, maybe not. Maybe he really is just Keegan. I
just saw that out of the corner of my eye. I figured I should say something about that.
And day 2 of the Big Ten ACC Challenge, after an 2-0 start for the ACC, Clemson knocked off Penn State in double overtime. They should have won that thing in regulation. They did not. They threw away their lead late, missed some free throws, and gave up a big 3 at the buzzer. But as I
learned on my first ever road trip as a college basketball manager, Clemson, weirdly tough place to play basketball, mostly because that campus is in the middle of nowhere. But good to see they still can sneak in some wins in the challenge. I know, Illinois ran Syracuse off the court in Champaign. Maryland ran Louisville off their own court. Nebraska fans, at least we're not Louisville. That's very much still a thing. Louisville is now, is it 0-8 or 0-7? They're either 0-7 or they are 0-7. So, Nebraska fans, at least we're not Louisville. At least you're not Louisville.
Or Florida State.
Or Florida State. Now Iowa is getting ready to beat Georgia Tech.
Tie it up, correct?
Yes. Yeah. No locker room pinatas in Iowa City for Josh Pastner this year. And then Michigan and Virginia kind of duking it out right now. But
Wisconsin, Wake Forest going down to the wire as well. So
after Chucky hit a half court shot at the buzzer for halftime. So Chucky Hepburn doing Chucky Hepburn stuff. Yep.
Pretty even challenge so far between the Big Ten and ACC in the, like you said, the 24th and final edition of the challenge. The ACC leads overall with 12 wins to the Big Ten's 8. Had 3 ties in there, but the Big Ten has kind of dominated the challenge over the last decade or so. But this is the last year for it. So say farewell to be the last time that Nebraska takes part in this thing, and then who knows what will replace it.
If I had to guess, I'm just going to throw a guess out there. I sense a Big 10, Big 12 thing, probably. That's kind of what I would guess.
Well, yeah, if you're taking the ACC out of it, you already have one set up with the Big East that pretty much knocks you down to the Pac-12, the Big 12, or the SEC. So
I don't think the Pac-12 is going to want to play nice with the Big Ten after USC and UCLA join. So I would probably expect a Big 10, Big 12 thing to pop up at some point. Really, really unfortunate that Nebraska can't get matched up anymore with ACC powers like Boston College and Georgia Tech and Boston College again and Clemson. Yep, Clemson.
A couple of those matchups.
Couple road trips to Clemson. Yep, that was in there.
2 Boston Colleges, 2 Clemsons, 2 Georgia Techs, right?
I believe so. There was Florida State. Florida State was an early Miles one that was on the road. I think the year after they went to the tournament, there was a Miami game in there at PBA that was actually like a pretty fun game if I remember right. There was a Miami game at PBA there, and then the NC State quadruple overtime thing last year that we sat through in its entirety and then still did a podcast after. So that's what I remember. But
Nebraska is 5-6 in the challenge, so big one here to get back to 500 to finish this.
Absolutely, big one, big. But
and then, So Mekhi Ashton Langford is their leading scorer, 6'3" guard. Cannot shoot the ball from 3, so that means he is going to come in and hit 3 or 4 of them. He is 2 of 19 from 3 so far this season. So like I said, that means expect him to hit a few of them based on the recent trends. Jaden Zachary is their other double-digit scorer, 11.5 a game, 6'2" guard, who is shooting 39% from the field and has a negative assist-to-turnover ratio. Those are the only 2 double-digit scorers on the team. They have a 6'7", 230-pound forward is kind of their top scorer in the front court, averaging 9 a game. Their tallest guy that actually plays like real minutes is TJ Bickerstaff, who's 6'9" and like 200 pounds, who is shooting 43% from the field without shooting threes. So this is a bad offensive team. Prince Aligbe, who is from the Minnesota area, he played up at Minnehaha with Chet Holmgren and Jalen Suggs and those guys. He's their top recruit, top 150 kid. The freshman got hurt a minute into the second game of the season and hasn't played since. So that's a guy that could probably help him. I don't know what his status is or when he'll be back. But he's 6'6", kind of wing forward type there. So it's a bad offensive team, and it's hard to know what to make of their defensive metrics just based on their strength of schedule. But
I know who's proud of those defensive metrics. I know who's proud of them. That would be the Italian stallion himself, Jim Molinari. I know he's loving those defensive metrics. He doesn't care how bad the offense looks. He's all about those defensive numbers. But it'll be good to see Mo if he remembers me. That's being honest. I don't know if Mo will remember me. So we'll see.
I know he won't remember me.
No, it's fine, Mo. We only worked together for 3 years. We smoked cigars together on my 21st birthday. Oh, did I say that out loud? Oh, come on, Mo. Remember me. Come on, dude. But we'll see tomorrow. But yeah, Nebraska's favored by 6 points at home. You should win. Yes. Please win. It'd be a lot cooler if you won. I said this during the main game. Don't lose to a team that has New Balance jerseys. Just don't do that. Don't lose at home to a team with New Balance jerseys. But yeah, Nebraska, Boston College, get psyched. And then there's another game
On Sunday.
There's another game on Sunday. We're not
home game for us. The two of us.
We don't have to go too far. It's an inconveniently placed Sunday 3:30 game. I'd much rather be watching the Chiefs that afternoon. I'll be honest. Probably the least anticipated Nebraska Creighton game that I can remember, at least from the Nebraska side. And I'm sure with the run of games Creighton's had recently, it's probably that way from their side too. It's kind of just another game on the schedule this year, to be honest.
Yep. Creighton is number 7 in the AP poll. They're 15 in KenPom, and that's even being held down a little bit, I'm sure, by kind of the preseason rankings where they were kind of lower regarded than a lot of the human polls just based on kind of their metrics last season. So yeah, Creighton is very good.
That was going to be my summary. Creighton good. Creighton good. Can confirm.
9th on offense and 37th on defense. And I think defensively, they've got some things to shore up, but they've got the potential to be better than that as well on that end with Ryan Kalkbrenner in the middle. They just had a great run down in Maui, came up just a couple points short of a very, very good Arizona team in the final.
And if you want to take a look at a really high-level game of basketball, regardless of where your fandom lies, Creighton goes to number 2 Texas on Thursday night. That game is at, I believe, 6 o'clock on ESPN. It's part of the Big East Big 12 battle. Texas is number 1 in KenPom. Very good defensive team.
Third in defense, 12 in offense.
Yep, and all Chris Beard needed to do was find a real point guard to play with those score-happy guards in the backcourt. And that's all it took for his team to make some early season noise. So if you want to take a look at the Blue Jays or just a really good college basketball game, tune into Creighton, Texas on Thursday. It'll be a lot prettier than the game on Sunday. So that's all I'm going to say on that. And we can provide the autopsy next week.
Yeah. Probably maybe one of the most intriguing storylines for that game is the battle of former Summit League All-Stars with Sam Griesel for Nebraska and Baylor Shireman for Creighton, who predictably has fit in perfectly and has really elevated that team. He's been exactly what Creighton needed and really kind of completes that starting 5 with all the guys they brought back from last year. They still got Ryan Kalkbrenner in the middle, 7-1, absolute defensive force, really efficient offensive player. Got Arthur Klum at the 4, kind of a playmaking stretch big. They've got Trey Alexander in the backcourt who will probably draw the defensive assignment on Sam Griesel. And he's a guy that plays bigger than he is, long, really scrappy defensively, and best mid-range game in the region, I think, in the area.
This isn't your brother or your cousin's Creighton team that all they do is shoot threes. They got some guys who have killer mid-range game. They've got a really stout big man in the middle in Kalkbrenner. I don't think they've gotten the most or the best from Kaluma yet, and he's still working his way back from an injury. So,
and then they've got the reigning Big East Freshman of the Year, Ryan Nemhard, who dropped 2 20-point games down in Maui there, and was raining pull-up threes. Which, if he's doing that.
He was doing that, and yamming on dudes.
That also.
Proceed with caution if you want to either attend the game or watch the game on Sunday. There's some good NFL games on in the afternoon. Some World Cup knockout games. However you choose to spend your time on Sunday, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I can only make recommendations. All I know is someone thought it would be a good idea to put a Michigan-Kentucky game in London at the exact same time that England's knockout round World Cup game will be played on Sunday. So that'll be my fun little factoid, and that's where I'll leave my thoughts for the week.
Oh yeah, going into the week 1-1, I think needs to be the goal. You got to come out of this week with a win to stay above 500. They are 4-3 right now, I believe, after the MTE. And
you are correct.
Again, aim for a split this year. Get that Boston College. Like, I don't think again, probably not going to expect an upset win in that Creighton game. But if you get a win against Boston College and Derrick Walker again looks good, I think that you remain on schedule. That's kind of where you need to be to just keep the trajectory moving forward, no matter what happens in that Creighton game. If you get that win against Boston College, then I think you'll feel good about kind of heading into that really tough stretch. But yeah, that's the goal right now. One game at a time. Let's go see what they can do here against Boston College on Wednesday, and then, like you said, we'll be back next week to recap both these games, Boston College and Creighton, and look ahead to the early Big Ten games. So this is the Nebraska Shootaround podcast. Again, go subscribe if you haven't already. Like, retweet, tell a friend. Rate the podcast. We appreciate it. Go check out my work at hailvarsity.com. It's a great time to subscribe right now. We've got holiday deals going on.
Yes, something else happened recently. There was some big news out of Lincoln that happened. Something happened. But.
Oh yeah, and Fred Woodward was there on Monday to welcome Matt Rule along with Amy Williams and some of the other coaches there, just kind of checking out the kind of welcome for the new head football coach. But we've got all kinds of coverage of that. I'll have NCAA volleyball tournament coverage at hailvarsity.com. So, and continued basketball coverage. So we have all that. Check out Bigelow's work with Huskers Illustrated. They're again, they're continuing to follow along with all this stuff going on over there at Huskers as well. So some pretty good sources there to get all your Huskers coverage.
Yeah, man. Follow along with us if you want. It's a busy time of year for everybody. Volleyball and a new head football coach and basketball season going on. So, follow along with us. We know what we're talking about. We can, we've got some okay takes from time to time. Like he said, tell a friend. It's going to be an interesting next couple weeks for all Nebraska athletics. So we're happy to have you. We appreciate you. We hope you had a good holiday, and we'll talk to you next week.